Stream and record.
Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, if we may. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, have the roll call, please. Ms. Wall,
Hello.
How you doing?
Anthony Harris,
present.
Darlene Walk,
Present.
Blake Harris, Valerie Cruz, Greg Peugeot, Taylor Steffen, Kirsten Pooh,
Present.
Darcy Munden,
Present.
and Richard Kuntz.
Present.
Okay, I have a reading of the minutes from last meeting, please.
The approval?
Yes.
The approval of the minutes?
Yes, isn't that what I said?
Reading, like we just wanted to make sure, like we're not about to read them.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is passed. Now, we're supposed to have a presentation about the National Civic League Civic Index.
That's correct.
That be presented by you?
Yes. And at the pleasure of the chairman, before we dive into it, I would just like to welcome our newest member of the Community Relations Commission, Ms. Darcy Munden. Ms. Munden, would you like to introduce yourself to your colleagues?
Hi, I'm Darcy. I know Miss Darlene over there. I've been in and out of working with like Democratic women, and I took some class. I majored in social work at Bowling Green Firelands. Got my bachelor's. Married and living in Sandusky all my life.
Awesome, awesome. We're glad to have you here as part of this group. Let me switch over my source so that the people at home can see from the beginning. All right, so today's discussion will center around an overview of the Civic Index, a tool for measuring the level of civic engagement from the National Civic League. The mission of the National Civic League, if you're not familiar, is to advance civic engagement to create equitable, thriving communities. They seek to achieve this by inspiring, supporting, and recognizing inclusive approaches to community decision-making. The National Civic League was founded as the National Municipal League following a gathering of civic leaders in 1894. This respected group of about 100 community leaders included Theodore Roosevelt, Louis Brandeis, and Frederick Law Olmsted, and they came together to address incompetence, inefficiency, patronage, and corruption in local governments. Now, local civic leaders needed inspiration and new models for governing, and this helped to provide that. And during the next 120 years, the National Civic League led major reforms in the way that local communities were governed, including the professionalism of city services, the creation of the city manager system, which we use, the nonpartisan makeup of many local elected bodies, which we use as well, and electoral reform and inclusive civic engagement.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Marcus, could you slow down a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Zooming through your presentation.
No history of American politics and civic engagement would be complete without a chapter on the National Civic League. So as always, I like to start with a roadmap for our discussion today. The first step is to both define the Civic Index and the foundational concept of civic capital. Next, moving on, we're going to discuss the purpose of the Civic Index. And after that, we will move to the justifications for using a tool like the Civic Index. And lastly is a proposed approach to help jumpstart the conversation about how to implement such a task if the CRC wishes to do so. And this was birthed from, I think, comments from our colleague Greg Peugeot, who was looking for ways to bring this meeting to the community, to get out into the community and start to do more engagement type work. And so after researching a couple different tools, I came across this one, and I wanted to throw this out to you all. Now, defining civic capital, right? The Civic Index can be boiled down to 3 large buckets or domains. That's relationships, networks, and capacities. Before we dive into this discussion, I want to level set by defining the key concept that will frame this work, which is civic capital. Civic capital refers to the formal and informal relationships, networks, and capacities that a community uses to make decisions and solve problems. It's the collective strength of our connections, our collaborations, and shared commitments to one another. Civic capital encompasses 7 components. That's engaged residents, inclusive community leadership, collaborative institutions, embracing diversity and equity, authentic communication, culture of engagement, and most importantly, shared vision and values. Each of these components represents the building blocks of a vibrant and thriving community. Together, they form the foundation from which we can address the challenges, seize opportunities, and create a more equitable and connected city of Sandusky. Next is the purpose of the Civic Index. So this is a critical tool that can help us better understand the current landscape of civic engagement and participation in Sandusky. The primary purpose of using the Civic Index is threefold. First, it allows us to gather data and insights to determine the current state of civic participation and community involvement in Sandusky. This means we'll be able to see where our community stands in terms of resident engagement, collaborative efforts, and an overall sense of involvement among our neighbors. Second, it helps us identify, I gotta make sure the camera is on the podium for the people at home to follow along. Source. There we go. There we go. Sorry for people at home on YouTube. Second, it helps us identify the existing civic assets, networks, and capacities that we already have that exist in Sandusky. Now, this could include everything from an active neighborhood group to engaged local leaders or strong partnerships with local bedrock institutions. By recognizing these strengths, we can leverage them to enhance our community's civic engagement. Third, the Civic Index help us pinpoint the gaps, challenges, and opportunities for improving civic engagement and participation and problem solving. We may find that certain parts of our community feel disconnected. They may feel left out or left behind, or that there are barriers preventing residents from fully engaging in local affairs. This tool will give us clarity we need to address these issues head on. But overall, establishing a baseline of where we are now, highlighting our strengths, and identifying areas of improvement, the Civic Index will provide us with a comprehensive understanding of Sandusky's civic capital. And this understanding will help guide efforts as we work to strengthen civic engagement, ensure that all voices are heard, and build a more connected and resilient community. Now, the goal in this process isn't just to measure, but to actively improve it. By using the insights that we can gain from a tool like the Index, we can create targeted strategies and initiatives to help foster a vibrant civic life where every resident has the opportunity to contribute and benefit from Sandusky's growth and success. Because we are growing and we are successful. So the first key justification for using this tool, right, is that it establishes a baseline. And by utilizing this, we can create a starting point to which we can gauge current state of civic engagement in Sandusky. And this is crucial because without understanding where we stand today, it becomes challenging to measure progress or identify areas needing attention in the future. This baseline data will serve as our benchmark, allowing us to track changes and improvements in civic participation over time. As we continue to work towards enhancing community involvement, the baseline will be an essential reference point, helping us to see the impact of our efforts and adjust our strategies accordingly. The second justification for using the Civic Index is that it facilitates community connection. This tool will enable direct engagement between the Community Relations Commission and our residents. By involving community, the assessment process, we foster a sense of ownership and collaboration. This is not just about gathering data. It's about building relationships and trust within our community. When residents feel connected to their local government and see their input being valued, they are more likely to stay engaged and participate in civic life. And this provides us a structured way to help make these connections and strengthen the bonds within the city of Sandusky. The third reason is the index is valuable is its focus on inclusive engagement. One of the strengths of the index is that its emphasis on engaging diverse cross-sections of the community. I can't tell you how many times that we put out surveys or data gathering exercises for whatever initiative, and when you look at the distribution of the responses from the survey, there's clear gaps when you compare that to the demographic makeup of the city of Sandusky. And so we want to ensure that every voice is heard and valued in the process, but not only being heard and valued, that you're arming residents with the skills and the tools to be productive in their engagement with community stakeholders and especially with community government. Lastly, it provides data-driven insights, right, that can guide the work. And the insights gained from this will help inform the CRC's recommendations and potential strategies to the City Commission. This means our decisions will be grounded in real data, reflecting the actual needs, strengths, and challenges of the community. And by using these insights, we can move from assumptions to evidence-based solutions in decision-making. And that makes our strategies more effective, and they align with what the residents truly want and need. Now, this data-driven approach will not only help us prioritize efforts, but also provide clear, actionable steps which we can take to enhance civic engagement across the city. And one of the most powerful aspects of the Civic Index is alignment with the Community Relations Commission's core goals of enhancing the level of inclusion and broadening the level of engagement within Sandusky civic life. The Civic Index is designed to empower our residents to voice their concerns, share their aspirations, and contribute to shaping the future of our community. It's about bringing everyone to the table, especially those who have historically been underrepresented or unheard.
Now, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is this going to be a lecture-type presentation? Or are you going to open this up to input from the commission itself? Because one of the first things that I noticed about this, when you're saying engaging residents with the Civic Index, do we pay our city commission?
The City Commission does have a modest compensation for their time that they...
Modest, that's deductive or inductive reasoning. What I'm saying is, why is it that our city commission only engages with the community on, what is it, Mondays, or what is the day of the meetings? On Mondays, and that's only if people present themselves at the commission meeting. Whatever happened to, if you're a paid representative of the city, what's wrong with the commission itself going out in the community on times that are not dedicated to that Monday meeting and engaging in the community? Because you could sit in a commission meeting and talk all you want about civic engagement and things like that, but unless you're out there among the people, you don't really know what's going on. You're doing the dogs and cats being eaten philosophy. Somebody said it, so it must be true. But you're not out there actively engaging yourself with the community. They don't know. How many people in Sandusky can you honestly say know the city commission?
And that's what we want to measure.
And it's the city commission's responsibility to introduce themselves. Everybody screams, we need to know more about Kamala Harris. We need to know more about our commission. Who are they? What do they stand for? And how do they plan to engage themselves with the community? Not how do we plan to engage ourselves with the commission. The commission has a responsibility as representatives of the community to get out there and see what they can do to make things better.
Great points, all. And I think that when we move to the section that talks about the implementation and how that you all as a body would like to move forward, I think inviting commissioners to participate in these meetings is a great idea.
Why do we have to invite them?
Yeah, I got a,
This meeting is open. Can't they just walk in the
Right.
door and have a seat?
yeah, I got a quick comment.
We have a commissioner here.
Yeah, I'm on the commission, so I don't mind speaking. And actually, you know, I agree with you. I can't speak for the other commissioners, right? But I do know other commissioners actually do go out into the community. I mean, every time I think about a commissioner who goes out into the community, sometimes I always think of Dave Waddington and what he does to hit these parks and to go clean up these parks, and invites other people to go out there with him. And he's not just cleaning up, he's talking to people, a lot of people he's come to know because of that relationship that he's built with those individuals. Other citizens are welcome to attend, right? That's the only thing I'll say about him, because I can speak more about myself than I can speak about anybody else, right? When I think about getting out into the community, I'm involved in various ways in getting out into the community. And a lot of times I think that what happens is we need to take advantage of whatever it is that we have at our disposal. And one of the vehicles that I see that's at our disposal right now is the very vehicle that we're sitting in, right? It is called the Community Relations Commission, right? And so the very things that you're talking about, and it's excellent that you're bringing them up right now, this vehicle is for that. This vehicle is a place where the community relations and anything that you decide in this body that you believe that the citizens should be engaged, this is the place to engage them. This is the place that city commissioners can come to and they can talk to the people, right? So I don't want to kind of beat that dead horse further to death, but the bottom line is, like, I can't even count the number of times that I'm out and about, and can't speak for other commissioners, but I know many of them do the same thing in their own way, right? We all have to do what we believe is right to do and how to meet people in our own way. So, and it's not to try to defend anybody, because I don't really need to defend myself. Folks, they already know, right? Now, there are a lot of people who they don't want to get to know, right? They'll take sound bites from other people and listen to other people, and things become misconstrued that way. But I always tell people this: anytime anybody disagrees with anything that I have to say, I am always willing to talk to you.
Tell me to my face.
Yes, yes. And so, you know, I can't speak for other commissioners, but I think that, I know some commissioners who are willing to speak to you face to face and willing to set up the engagement between you and maybe another person who works for the city. I know I've done that already. I'm only here 7 months. I've been on 8 months. This is the 8th month, right? I didn't become a city commissioner to just kick back and chill, but I do know that we all have our own way of engaging with citizens.
And to your point, Chairman and Commissioner Coos, thank you for that. America has a strong history of civic engagement and civic clubs. When you think of things like the Rotary and all of those traditional institutions. But as time has gone on, Americans have drifted away from joining clubs. They have drifted away from joining institutions. And we've kind of gone into our own silos. And as you can see by the audience that is beating down the doors to be here, the level of civic engagement, both here and also at commission meetings, is an indicator of there may be some gaps. And so I think that as we go through this process and you start to define and look at the tool and talk about how to implement, I think that inviting and opening this up to say, like, hey, yes, commissioners, come along. But sometimes I think there is a maxim out there in science that when you observe something, you end up interfering with the activity of that thing that you are observing. So sometimes it might not be the best for them to be there, so people can speak from their hearts. They may feel a certain way if an elected official is in the room, but community members such as yourselves, citizens, volunteers who are utilizing their time to help move the city forward can have sometimes have a more productive conversation. So I acknowledge and definitely see your point in that level of elected leadership getting out into the public and meeting the people where they are. But as for this body, I think this is a way to jumpstart that and be a catalyst to help grow civic engagement overall and holistically.
Okay, then how would you suggest that this commission proceed to try to inject the thought process of community involvement by coming and participating in these meetings? What would you suggest we do? I mean, we get an email saying this is the meeting. and I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't get the register. And there's a reason for that, but that's personal. But we don't have a way to notify the community. I mean, unless you go on Facebook or something like that, but there are people that don't get on Facebook. There are people that don't get on TikTok. There are people that read the paper. There are people that listen to the radio. You know, what avenues can we take to make sure that we are reaching out to involve the community into participation in these type of meetings? Because, you know, that's why you got to gavel. Boom, sit down. You know, you can stop people from going off on tangents. You know, the thing is, we still want to hear, and this type of environment, even if they are emotional, you have to sort through the emotion. You know, even if they are emotional about what they're saying, it means that they're concerned about their community. Let them be emotional. It's our job to try to control that emotion and tamp it down to a reasonable discussion. You know, but how do we get them here?
And I think that this, a nice little segue, this tool is a way to operationalize that thought, that what you're talking about is that you need a structured framework from which you can then implement these desires that you have. And when you talk about across the board, because you don't want to put the cart before the horse and start talking about solutions before you even know the data and know what the baseline is. So you want to go through these types of exercises to be able to establish that. And then, like, okay, we see communication is a big gap.
Okay, so you go back to what I said. Where does the baseline come from?
The indexes, the tool.
The base. The baseline comes from the base. And what is the base? The base is the community. You have to get the community in to establish that baseline by knowing what the base is looking for. You know, so my question again is, how do we draw the people into these type of environments?
Write that down. That is a great, I think, excellent question that drives research. Research is driven off questions, right? And when you do these types of exercises, you seek to answer those questions. You don't answer the question before you actually do the exercise.
No, you start with a premise, and the premise leads you to the conclusion. And the premise is, what does it take for the commission to draw people in? The conclusion, I don't have it yet.
There we go.
I have to just do the premise and the arguments, and then lead you to a deductive, valid reason for them to do what they want to do. I can sit here and be inductive all day long and just spew out premise after premise, but not lead you to a conclusion. What I'm saying is, take us to the conclusion. You know, you can throw premise after premise at me, but if you don't have a conclusion, my mind turns off.
Mr. Chair, may I say that I understand what Mr. Harris is talking about. Do you think by allowing the public to know that the CRW is where they can come and see the commissioners and have a discussion along with us for maybe one subject? Because if they get on 1,000 subjects, you'll be here all night. So maybe if you could let the public know you can come here, because when you do go to the city commissioner meeting, they tell you 2 minutes. If they want to discuss something, we should be able to discuss it, but if it gets out of hand, we can always adjourn. But you got to decide how long you're going to discuss a subject and how many subjects you're going to discuss in a night. So the way we go about doing it, like you said, you got to register, you got Facebook, Twitter, Twat, I don't know what it is, but they got something there that everybody can spread the word. You invite a friend and have that friend invite a friend and another friend. We're going to talk about this today. I guarantee you'll get a crowd. You got to get a specific subject, but to get it out, give us the date we're going to have the meeting and tell us what we're supposed to put in the paragraph. I guarantee you.
Don't underestimate the constituency.
No, just
Because if you lay the groundwork for the discussion, they will follow it. And if they don't, it's your job as a person on the commission to put them in check. That's enough.
And I think that I love your feedback right now because it's leading directly to what exactly the activity is and what the Civic Index is about and how do you implement that, and that at the end. But we can discuss that now because I think that the symptoms of what you described, of course, a couple things: the lack of civic engagement, communication, the topics, being able to address, feeling that you can come, like these are symptoms of a sickness that is civic engagement, that is civic capital. And I think that by doing this, I think that you can make a measurable impact on the level of civic engagement. But first, you got to know what it is. You got to know where it's at. And I think this exercise, not here today, but what you all decide to go in the future, if you would like to do this and utilize this tool, will help get you to that point to where what you are all describing is that outcome that you want to see.
Well, I'll let you proceed with your discussion because I see it's leading to further questions in my mind about this civic engagement index. I'll let you continue. My bad.
No, you're all good. It's all good. It's all good. But yeah, the engagement with with the residents is really the part and the meat and the potatoes of it all. And we will talk about that. So the proposed approach, right? The civic engagement is a framework and it conducts a series of public meetings as you as a public body being in the community at locations going to the people instead of the normal paradigm of the people having to come to government. 1-hour meetings are designed, and it's structured as a 1-hour meeting, but it can go longer if people so choose, designed to directly engage with the community utilizing this index, which was in the packet that you got earlier, the system of questions with the score, and then there are a series of more qualitative questions afterwards that allow for group discussions to really dig down deep into what people are feeling and what their perspective is. And so through those facilitated small group discussions, you invite residents to share their experiences, their perspectives, their insights on civic participation in Sandusky. And the goal is to create an open and inclusive environment where everyone feels welcome and comfortable in contributing. Now, when you break into those smaller groups, you ensure that all voices can be heard, and we can dive deeper into those components after they're done taking the quantitative assessment. It is the heart of this engagement process. It does the civic index as a tool is just a tool, but the heart is the engagement process that you go through with your community members. And that provides us with firsthand feedback that we need to understand the current state of civic engagement in Sandusky. Because I can sit up here based on my assumptions and observations and say, yeah, it's kind of broken. We don't see a lot of crowds. We don't see people coming. It's the regular voices. Same thing that goes on in cities all across America. But I think that is a dangerous path to go down, and I think that you should a measured approach, a mixed methods approach, both quantitative and qualitative, to be able to say conclusively what the baseline is, then that will allow us to engage in strategies. Now, the second part of that is what I just kind of said, the data gathering piece. And so that assessment that was in the packet, the first part is quantitative, right? So people look at it, they score it, and it's not something that they should be thinking about deeply. It's their initial thoughts on that particular question, and they mark down where it lies, you score it, and we aggregate those and can report out. But I think the more difficult piece is the qualitative content analysis that happens afterwards, because then that's chronicling people's conversations and taking meaning from that and looking at themes and being able to combine that all together for a sophisticated, holistic, well-rounded analysis. And then lastly, as with in conjunction with the ordinance that is the CRC, produce a report that provides the detailed overview of the index results, highlighting the strengths of our civic capitals, the gaps we've identified, and specific recommendations for enhancing civic engagement in Sandusky. Now, you could pay somebody to come do this, but I think that it means much more if it's from the Community Relations Commission, because this is what it's for, and you all are real, live, breathing Sandusky citizens, volunteers who are giving up their time to help move their community forward. Now, the potential outcomes, as you spoke to, right? The primary goal is to boost civic engagement across all sectors of the community. So involving residents in this process, we will help encourage greater participation and a stronger sense of community ownership. This increased engagement helps ensure that all voices are heard and residents feel empowered. The other outcome is improved decision-making. The insights that you gather from that will give a clear picture of the civic capital, and it will equip the CRC and the City Commission as a whole with the data needed to make informed, evidence-based decisions. And this results in policies and initiatives that are more aligned with the real needs and aspirations of our residents. And of course, we have our strategic initiatives. We are in the midst of the strategic plan. And so for the outcomes of that plan, this is only adds to it, because when you have an active, engaged resident citizenry, you can go farther and do more as government. I feel oftentimes we look at government as the primary driver and doer of things, and I am not a proponent of that. I think citizen-led, in conjunction with your nonprofits, with your private sector movement and engagement is the best way forward, and everyone has ownership and some skin in the game. And lastly, ongoing monitoring and evaluation. Once you have a baseline, you can kind of look at what you're doing and measure it, and whatever your key performance indicator, your KPI might be, whether that's attendance at meetings like this, the City Commission meeting, more active engagement in surveys for initiatives that we have, whatever we kind of look at and agree upon what those key indicators can be is the way that you measure that. So, as you can move forward, if you decide to move forward and try to engage in this exercise, there are others doing this, right? I'm a Leadership Ohio Fellow 2024, and they have worked with America 250 and gotten a grant to do something across the state. And they will be in our region in November in Huron, actually screening a film, a documentary called Join or Die. And this is based on the research of an native Ohioan, Robert Putnam, the author of Bowling Alone. And the film emphasizes the vital role that clubs and civic organizations play in fostering community bonds and strengthening democracy. And that will be on November 21st at Bowling Green State University Fireland campus in Huron, hosted by the Community Foundation. And it's free and open to the public, and it will be an excellent chance for us to engage with the broader conversation around civic engagement that's happening statewide. This is not something that's isolated or a problem or issue that is just a Sandusky thing. This is something that's happening statewide, but there is an undercurrent of people with a desire to want to be more engaged, but don't know how to be more engaged, because the skill sets from the people who were more engaged are no longer here. They've passed on. But those skill sets and those behaviors and those practices about how to be civically engaged. And that's, it's more than just being sitting on my phone and putting out an opinion on social media. Like that is a part of communication, but it's a one-way communication. Real, true, authentic civic engagement involves dialogue. And if you don't know, or you feel intimidated by coming into these official proceedings to be able to communicate with your local government, that's a problem. And that's a problem that we need to address, because we want to hear those voices. We want those people who oftentimes aren't heard or not seen to come share their perspective with local government. Now, we have to understand that government has a structure, it has a formality to it, and that is for a purpose. And that people need to learn how to navigate that and learn how to engage within that. Government's not going to change in this formality, but what we can do is arm the residents and citizens with the tools necessary to be proactive in that engagement with government, so that when they have conversations, they're productive. They're not in echo chambers where someone has their perspective that they can throw off, government has a press release that they can do, and no one's talking to each other. This is a way that we can actually be a part of improving that status quo that exists. Now, secondly is Second Harvest of North Central Ohio. full disclosure, I am a board member. They have community roundtables. This will be the second round that they're doing. And the first one was just to kind of talk to about food insecurity and the partners, but this second round specifically is focusing on civic engagement. And you can see this is a theme. This is something that's happening all across our state, and I would love for us to get involved with that. Now, those roundtables will take place in their multi-county service area, so Lorain, Erie, Huron, and Crawford counties. So they will have Erie County, and typically they do Sandusky when they choose that. So I think that's another great idea. They haven't given out the schedule for those engagement, but they were looking to do them in October. And so I think this is another way for this body to help engage in that conversation. Now, I will leave y'all with this, and then I am definitely ready for some heated discussion and debate. The health of a democracy depends on the degree to which its citizens are informed, engaged, and able to work together to address common problems. And you can't work together to address common problems unless you have those two elements of being informed and engaged. And the Civic Index, I think, is a good tool to help us with the engagement piece. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Now, to your questions, I think that in terms of where you go forward, next steps, in the email you have the full comprehensive report from the National Civic League, which gives case studies in different communities. They have some Ohio examples that they've utilized this index in previously that can maybe perhaps broaden the discussion. The tool is in there. The facilitator guidebook is in there as well, so that you can kind of see what the flow of this would possibly be. But I think that this would be a valuable exercise and help actually implement the desire from some of your colleagues on the commission to get into the community. Getting into the community and just like, hey, come talk is cool. Come share, get it off your chest is cool, but having a structured framework and actually a tangible outcome that will help improve the overall vibrancy, livelihood, and engagement of our city, I think is a valuable exercise, and that would be a meaningful contribution of this particular body to the overall success of the city moving forward. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Time frame, I'm still thinking about time. 'Cause, you know, you get into a discussion, people have to know this is the cutoff time that we're going to be doing this for the evening. We're not going to talk about it for 2 and 3 hours and go outside and get shot. We're not going to do that because we don't want to have heated discussions, but we do want to have discussions in the most important areas for Sandusky to continue to move forward. So are you going to have can you put it in the newspaper? How do you suggest he does the advertisement for this?
Similar to most of our, I think all of them, we have press releases that we do, which are free to the Register and other media outlets. Also, we have our social media outlets online that we can promote and advertise these types of engagements. And then there are more traditional tools, which is like you said, hey, you call a friend, you call a friend, you got 5 people you call, okay, cool. It's 7 people on the board, that's 35 people, which is, these conversations are tailored to 15 to 20 people is what they're structured for. And so like those are great numbers to have in there. So you can combine all of those efforts, which are things that we do now.
You know, I personally have invited the Register to bring a representative down to these meetings to report what we discuss. I have yet to see a representative from the Register. Matt Westerhold refuses to return my calls. You know, I don't know what, this is Sandusky Register. I see more Norwalk, Port Clinton, Bayview news in that paper than I do Sandusky, unless it's bad. I see editorials talking about what's wrong with Sandusky, but what are they, as a supposed community news outlet, doing to present themselves as a viable conduit to disseminate information throughout the community?
It's a great question for the Sandusky Register.
And where are they?
Do you want me to talk with Matt? We have a different relationship than anyone else.
Hopefully
If you
he's
don't
watching
mind,
now,
let
so he
him
can
know.
reach out to you.
You know, the thing about it is, there's nothing wrong with an adversarial relationship.
Right.
It's what you glean from that relationship that matters. You know, if they're, to use a sports analogy, if you're afraid to steal a base, you're never going to be the base stealing champion of the league. If you're afraid to confront the Community Relations Commission, you're never going to be a viable conduit for the ideas and opinions of that community.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
So,
which is
to
one
your
of the
point.
reasons why I don't get to register.
To your point, so one of the domains is authentic communication in the assessment. You have the choices of, we don't have this is a challenge for us, this is a moderate strength, this is a real strength. In these types of engagements, when you utilize this tool, the question is, we have a trusted civic-minded sources of information and news in the community. You answer in that group, do you have that? Then you go to the group discussions and dig down a little bit deeper. And when that's over, you can have a quantitative, measurable, fact-based, evidence-based thing that you can present to them and say, as a bedrock institution of our community, from this research, it shows that the community doesn't feel that you are communicating and that they can come to you or that they can hear from you. But for one person's experience, for our own personal experience and what we have, when we utilize that, that can be waved off as, okay, that's just one person in the crowd, that's one noise. But when you actually have hard data from a repeatable methodology that is sound and tested, then you go to them with that, then there is nothing to do but actually accept what is given and work on changing it. But you got to do the work first. You can't ask the questions now because they're going to ask you, what evidence do you have of this? And you have your own personal,
phone records? You want my email?
No. You want your own, that's your own personal experience, right? What we are talking about is civic engagement, broad-based across the city.
Okay, that's where you're wrong. It's not my personal experience. What it is my task as a chairman of the Community Relations Commission to reach out to the conduit for the community and invite them to participate in what we feel is something that's needed and wanted in this community is open communication and a pipeline from the citizens to the commission. You don't have that conduit here. What do? Buy airtime on the radio? Do we go around and fly planes across the sky? You know, this is what's happening. Do we post our minutes on billboards? No. If they read the stuff in the paper, the media's goal is to print the truth and to disseminate information that's viable and relevant to the community. If you're not doing that, if you're constantly worried about John Doe's puppy that won the county fair, if that's what you're printing, then that's not helping me. You know, I don't go to the county fair. Why do I care about John Doe's puppy? You know, but what I do care is why hasn't the community done more to reinstitute a YMCA in the city of Sandusky?
That's a question for the citizens to ask us, so that way we can get a conducive answer to what they want to know. Not us asking them the question, they ask us, and if we can give them some feedback or tell them, we are going to touch base on that subject. If it takes too long, we don't have anybody that can give us an answer. With the commissioners being here, other than my friend Richard here, they need to come also so that way they can hear what's actually bothering the citizens of Sandusky.
Then our job is to find out who has the answer to why we don't have a why. Who has that answer? Who has an answer to the reason why there's not more money invested in the Boys and Girls Club in the city of Sandusky? Who has an idea of why there's not more accessible conduits for senior citizens to participate in the community activities? You know, who do we see? Who do we go to? You know?
I think that
If the Register
go ahead.
truly had investigative reporters, we wouldn't be asking these questions, they would.
And you make compelling points, Chairman. And I think that it is
About that hour.
an exercise in futility for us in this moment in time to hypothesis and or thoughts about why another institution outside the city of Sandusky is not doing what we think they were doing. But I think that you can get to that answer by doing this type of work, and you can bring to them a comprehensive perspective that is not only, like I said, one
Okay, like you
person's
say,
perspective, but
the
the
only
whole
way to get
broadly.
to the crux is to ask the questions. If I ask the questions to this room, what purpose is, if there was a person from the Register here reporting this, he'd go back to Matt Webster and say, hey, they're concerned about the reason we're not investigating this. But there's nobody here to take that back to him. Is he even listening to what's going on here?
Mr. Chair, may I make a
Yes, you may.
statement? I'm the commission clerk for the city. Something I've observed just lately, and all those people you saw in the vestibule when you came in, they're working for the water pipeline, and they're going around and going door to door. That was posted in the paper.
And I knew
Which,
that.
if you look at the Register and you look at their readership, I believe the latest, don't quote me, it was like around 7% of our community purchases the Register, 7%.
Do you realize why?
I'm not here to say why, I'm just saying, I think a big caveat we have is we have young people who communicate on social media. But we have our older generation who are used to getting our news from the newspaper, the TV, maybe the radio, and that's the fall off. People are not buying, we're not doing local TV, we're not buying the newspaper. So we're not a small town where, I worked in a small town where they had a little sign in their window, and here's this meeting tonight. Here's this meeting, because it was a small town where everybody was walking by, oh, community relations meeting is tonight at 5, maybe I'll go. Oh, finance meeting is Thursday, ooh, I'd like to go to that. I don't know if that would work for our city, because I don't know how much of our residents walk by City Hall. Like, where could that calendar be? We have it on the website, but there's so many folks that don't utilize it. But to
So how
come
do you-
back to these people in the hallway,
So how do you engage the youth?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, all these youth in the hallway are going door to door. It was in the paper. We sent letters to all the residents. It was on Facebook. It's on our social media. Do you know how many phone calls I get daily? And if you look in the Facebook, you just see people over and over. Who are these people the city's sending out? They have no idea. And all those mediums have been used to tell them, and they still don't know why these kids are knocking on their doors. I don't know what the answer is. To me, that is a major question that we have to, how do you get the word out?
Okay,
Can I get in?
It's a great example.
Tell the right person.
You
Tell me.
don't get the paper then. How do you
how
find
do I
out?
get my news? I go in the community, I talk to people. I talk to people about why we don't have a why. I talk to people about why we don't have representation, but for senior citizens on the commission. I go out and I talk to people. That's how I find out. The things I do is like she said, I get on my laptop, I look at the email, I look at the notifications. That's how I knew that these young people were walking around checking for lead pipes in your home. I knew that. So somebody came down the street. So one of my neighbors came by and said, Mr. Harris, you usually know what's going on. Why are these people walking up and down the street? And I tell them, it's because they're checking for the pipe situation for water in the city of Sandusky. And then I also tell them, admonish them, you would know if you paid more attention to the things that go on in your community, and you look at what's going on. I said, occasionally there are things on Facebook and things that are actively, when I see a post from City of Sandusky, I read it. A lot of people scroll by because they see City of Sandusky, oh, what are they doing, asking us for more money, raising my taxes? There is no, I'll put it this way, there is a modicum of trust in the government of the city of Sandusky. You know, they don't feel that the commission is working for them. You know, Dave Waddington, Rick, Dr. Coons are different examples because they're out there. They're talking to the people. They let you know this is what's going on. You know, even if Dr. Coons posts on Facebook about when he's doing something or what he's doing something, do you realize how many people that reach? Because they look up and say, oh, Dr. Coons is on. You know, let me see what he's got to say. Or they look up and say, oh, Dave Waddington's on. Where's he going to be at next? You know?
I think what you're describing, and I love how you articulated it, you are describing someone who has a high level of civic engagement. And what we want is to have a broader based civic engagement. But how do you get there? You need to figure out what's going on right now, and you need to be, I think, systematic about it and measurable. And then if you all would, you know, entertain a motion to actually try to do this, and we can work through a plan of implementation of what that looks like in terms of the meetings, in terms of the calendar, the dates, the marketing tools to be able to get the information out, we can go about this process and we can start to answer these whys. That's how you answer the why. These why doesn't this? Why doesn't that? Because we have no baseline. We have no data. We have nothing that we can concretely point to outside of our own lived experiences that we can say, this is the reality. And now we can go towards solutions to actually mitigate these things. That's when you start to talk about how the what are you going to do to be able to change the narrative, to be able to change the status quo of a low level of civic capital and civic engagement. You go through these types of exercises to be able to give you that guidance first. I remember when I first presented this, someone asked me, a colleague asked me, okay, well, what's the outcome? What's the step that comes to it? I said, that's backwards. You do not know what you're going to do until you actually see what the reality is. Because if then you're just doing what government mandated, top-down type of government does. Like, we got an outcome already decided that we're going to do after this. We're just going to go through this exercise. And that's not real, authentic engagement. And so I would, you know, if you all are inclined to go on this journey, I would definitely, as the staff person on this, will work diligently to help put together a plan in conjunction with you all that works with all the members to be able to actually get out and get into the community and start to move the needle.
I looked at the email that you sent about this meeting. The first thing I saw was this thing was 47 pages. You know, the first thing that popped in my mind, how can I get through this and find out what is really pertaining to me and what's fluff? You know? And because of that, that made me not really engage myself in the thing, because I said, oh man, this is 47 pages. I got a critical thinking paper to write tonight. Oh, my granddaughter's coming over. You know, do I have time to sit down and read 47 pages of fluff? Tell me what you want.
Presentations for. That's what I want. I will entertain a motion from you all. If you want to do this, if you want to go on this process, as the staff person with the City of Sandusky, I will help guide this commission, this body, through that process and implement. Like, I'm more than capable of doing so. So it's really on, do you all want to actually utilize this type of framework, or would you like to see some other options or tools that you can use to address this?
Well, I'd like to make a motion that you proceed with the necessary steps to engage us in this activity.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you have it, Marcus.
That's a good work of people. She's a good worker.
All right. That's good for that agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Adjourn meeting.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments, or we got a long discussion, or anything pertaining to this presentation that we had?
I got a couple comments that I want to make. One, I agree with much of what you're saying, Mr. Harris, and I appreciate the presentation, the other Mr. Harris.
Okay.
But one of the things, as I listened to you talk, that just kept hitting me like in the face as a ton of bricks, is that, you know, we're talking about civic engagement, right? And so I've seen where information was posted, or maybe the Sandusky Register posted it, and I understand where you're coming from when you're saying, we don't need to spend any time talking about the Sandusky Register, because it's about what we can do. It's about us. It's about what this body can do. And I say all that to say, if we're talking about civic engagement, really giving citizens the opportunity to come in and maybe talk about some of the things that they didn't appreciate that we did, or they appreciated what we did, right? You got both sides of the coin. The thing is, you're always going to have a segment of the population who care so much that they'll continue to show up. And you're always going to have the majority of the population of people, for whatever reason, they may be happy with what's going on. They might have had a problem with maybe this issue or another issue, but overall they go, well, I'm good. It's not worth my time coming in here, and we have to keep that in mind. We shouldn't focus so much, I shouldn't tell anybody what to do, but I won't focus so much on, I need to bring people out. It's just not how I operate. Put the word out, let people know that this is going on, and who shows up, they show up. Who comes, they care enough about it to be here. But as far as, because there are people who know about some of the very things that you talked about, and they'll be here. Might not be a lot of them, but they'll show up, and they'll talk about it. Now, the issue that I've seen in my lifetime, particularly in the past 20 years, is that you can be civically engaged, and I have been for the 21 years since I've been back in my hometown. And what I've noticed is that there are going to be other people who weren't engaged previously, but as long as you have something concrete that they can follow, and if they're on the same page with you, they'll show up. You'll have others, and they happen to be the majority of the people who initially showed up, who say they believe and that something should be done, and you won't see them anymore. Let's just face the facts.
True.
Let's just be honest. That's the one thing. If anybody in here, if you've already known me, I don't have a problem with telling you what I believe is the truth. And this is what I've seen in my 21 years, that you'll have people who will engage for a minute, right? But if it's really important to you, the fight won't stop. And I don't mean to frame it as a fight always, but your effort will continue. I can't speak for anybody else. Mine has. And I know that other people know about some of these same issues that we talk about, and they'll say that they're unhappy with this. Let me give you a good example, because as you talk about the media, right, I never have a problem engaging other citizens. If we talk about the Register, I'm not going to spend my time talking about them. I'm only going to tell people what I think about them if they ask me, right? Sometimes you don't even need to ask me, right? I know that they don't cover issues in a balanced, fair, and objective way. I know this is a truth. And I know it's a truth because I'm a journalist. I'm a professional journalist. I know what good reporting should look like. Now, I say this. Part of civic engagement, even though the city doesn't necessarily have to do this, but citizens who really care about that, you know what they'll do? They'll create their own platforms. They'll take their phones and they'll go out and they'll come to meetings. They don't even have to do that at the city commission meeting, because the one thing I can say about city commission that I can't say, and I'll say it, I can't say about the Board of Education, is that they record. And I appreciate that. And I know that citizens appreciate the fact that they can go online and they can see the meetings, right? And so they can see the meetings. Actually, these are even posted. And I don't care what anybody tries to say about somebody who posts everything, like Mr. Schwanger. I appreciate him. I don't have to agree with everything he's talking about, but that's somebody who's civically engaged, whether you agree with him or not. He's somebody who's civically engaged, and you can talk about him, and you can talk about, that's petty. To you, it's petty. But to some other people, it's not petty. And so let's have that conversation about, yes, engage the citizens, and let's find out who those folks are, and let's allow them to speak their minds about any grievance they have about how something was handled. But at the end of it all, there still will be a point at which they say, well, we've talked about it enough, the decision is done. But then there are going to be other times where they say, you know what, maybe we should think about that more, and maybe we should do something about it. In all cases, this will happen. There'll be something that you challenged, something that you wanted, right? Other people wanted the same thing, and you were able to do something about it. The same time you do that, there are going to be other people who are unhappy. It's just the nature of life.
Yeah.
This is how life works, right? And so I'm only saying all this to say, yeah, I get it, but my question will always be, okay, first of all, what are we doing? The most important question to me is often, why are we doing it? We can answer that honestly, right? And then move forward with a simple strategy that allows people to engage and even have some sessions where they can learn how to engage effectively.
You know, that's the big thing. How do we get the city to gravitate from the I mentality to the we mentality? We're in this together. You know, not I. How do we get the city to look at things as a we situation? This is good for us. You know, how do we use this platform to get that thought process flowing throughout the community?
What has always worked for me in the past and in the organization that I'm in, we feed them. You feed them.
It sounds funny.
No,
Sounds
but
funny,
it's true.
But
You
you
feed 'em.
realize how many people show up if you say free hot dogs and hamburgers? If you
feed
turned
them.
around and said, the community relations is gonna have a meeting today, you know, there's gonna be free hot dogs and hamburgers and pop for people that show up. You realize how many people you have just to come for that
Just
hot
one
dog
point,
or hamburger,
Mr. Chairman.
But all of a sudden realize, hey, there's something going on here.
Are we allowed to do that to feed people?
Why not?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Feed them.
I would avoid dogs today.
Yes.
Dogs and cats.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
yes.
don't bring the,
Yes.
oh, get out of here.
One of the other
Because I know we did ice cream socials, the police officers do the ice cream socials, so similar to that, yeah.
Well, one of the other things that I failed to say this previously was that I believe that most of what brings people out is issue-oriented. It's issue-oriented. And it won't matter whether you have hot dogs or anything else to feed people. If it's issue-oriented and they care about it, they'll be there. And I say that because I've attended a couple of events recently. One was this affordable housing that was for seniors. It was like 200 people in there, right? It's issue-oriented, right? The other was related to housing, where the home assessments. There were like 80 people at that, right? So issue-oriented events. And I know that you do this, Kathy. I believe you know, at our charge, you'll put together press releases, right? And so much of what we do should be followed up with a press release.
How many people do you think would show up at a meeting if we said we were going to discuss the need for a YMCA in the city of Sandusky? How many people do you think would show up? Young people would show up.
I keep trying to.
Feed them.
Yeah, I keep trying to understand. You know, I love you, Mr. Harris, but I keep trying to understand. Like the YMCA is like, I mean, it was a mainstay in our community for years, but it's like gone now, and now we've moved on to recreation center, right? And now that's an issue, which it's issue oriented. We've talked about it. We gave citizens an opportunity to chime in about it, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
We did.
Ad nauseum, and at the same time, some of the things that came through, because this is an issue, one of the issues that came through was this idea that maybe it needed to have a swimming pool, right? They talked about that. That came through from the interviews and the conversations and everything else that was done. But they decided, well, we can't have a swimming pool, and here are the reasons why. Civic engagement, if you're really engaging citizens and they go, wait a minute, well, if you lay everything out for them and say, man, look at the budget, look at the liability, look at what we have. Apparently, people said, we understand, and they moved on. Tell me if I'm wrong. They moved on after they said, okay, as long as we'll have the recreation center, and then somebody else brought up this idea that we need to have a swimming pool, but we need to use the pool we have, this new pool over at the high school. Am I right or wrong? And so there was a point at which people could have said, I don't want that. And they could have come out in droves because they knew this was happening. But that's not what happened. People continued to move forward. And they continued to say, well, that should be a good thing. Let's hold them accountable and let's make sure that our children and families can use the pool. Am I right or wrong? That's what happened.
Yeah.
That's what happened. So here, and I'm going to wrap this up and I'm done for the rest of the evening. I promise. I'm done. once we got to this place where we are now, right, it's either we go with it and we say, hey, or we're civically engaged enough to say, we need to know what's happening at this point now with that. But to keep going back to like the YMCA, I'm having a hard time understanding that. But I just want some clarity on that. Like, we dealing with one issue at a time. Sometimes we deal with multiple issues, but let's deal with those issues and then focus on what's in front of us and not go back. Because there were opportunities behind us. People had the chance to speak. They did. Then they moved on.
And I think, Commissioner Kuntz, if I may, what you described, and you gave a good time frame for it in terms of that 20 years in which you've seen that issue-based engagement and civic participation around firebrand issues that get people emotionally connected. I think that what these types of tools and what the goal is, the overarching across the state, is sustainable, continuous civic engagement to where we are in broad base, one that is representational of the entirety of the community. And I think that is something that we should be working towards, that is something that we should be championing, and that is something that was once a mainstay in American society. Like, that was how America operated. And it's not that way anymore, but it's only going to stay the way that it is if we do nothing about it. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to do something.
I'm about to exercise my prerogative as chairman. We're almost 10 minutes over our time, and I know other people have things to do. I encourage you to seek out each of the email or the people on this commission and communicate with each other your ideas or viewpoints so that we can come together with a more concrete agenda of what we need to talk about. Get it to Kathy. I'm sure she'll be able to, to make sure that everybody has an email. And, my email is always there. My phone is up. Well, I had to turn it off today because we're in the meeting. But I was getting calls from people in my neighborhood just now at the beginning of this meeting wanting to know what's going on. So, I'm going to exercise my prerogative and ask, do we have any old business that we need to address? None being, do we have any new business that somebody like to present? In that case, I'd look for a motion for adjournment.
Motion.
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?